If you're an INFJ who hides behind calm smiles and careful words because the world has taught you that your truth is too much, this video will show you why we hide and what happens when we finally stop. Because the truth is, hiding isn't weakness, it's a survival instinct we've mistaken for personality. It's the armor we built long before we knew what we were protecting. If you've ever wondered why the world sees your empathy, but never truly sees you, this is where we start to understand. The INFJ stands at a peculiar crossroads in the human landscape. We are the therapists, the counselors, the ones who understand the shadows in other people's hearts before they do. And yet, despite possessing what appears to be an extraordinary gift for seeing others, the INFJ remains one of the most profoundly misunderstood personality types. The question is not why we are misunderstood, but why we ourselves have become architects of our own invisibility. We hide not only out of fear, though fear is certainly part of it, but also because hiding has become a survival mechanism so deeply ingrained in our psychological fabric that we often cannot distinguish it from who we actually are. To understand why INFJs hide requires us to venture into the mythic depths of identity, to explore the archetypes that govern our inner world, and to face a truth that most INFJs sense but rarely speak aloud. We have been taught, through countless invisible lessons, that our depth is too much, our feelings too intense, our insights too unsettling for a world that prefers comfort to truth. The INFJ archetype echoes throughout mythology and psychological literature, as the figure of the wise counselor, the oracle, the one who glimpses what others cannot see. Yet this oracle pays a price. In the cave of Plato's Republic, the prisoner who escapes the chains and ventures into the light discovers an unbearable truth. The world most people inhabit is constructed of shadows, and the light of authentic knowledge is painful. The INFJ is this escaped prisoner, carrying the burden of sight whilst surrounded by those still transfixed by shadows. We hide because we have discovered something terrifying about human nature, about relationships, about the fragility of truth in a world that often prefers comfortable illusion. When you can see manipulation before it unfolds, when you sense the abandonment in someone's future before they reach it, when you perceive the inner conflict tearing someone apart while they smile and say "I'm fine," you are carrying information that isolates you. The secret is this: INFJs hide not to protect ourselves, but to protect others from what we know. Consider the legend of Cassandra, who was cursed to speak the truth that no one believed. She stands in the city walls, seeing the future, crying out warnings, whilst the inhabitants of Troy dismiss her as hysterical or mad. INFJs live this myth every day. We see the trajectory of someone's choices, the inevitable heartbreak that follows their decisions, and the way patterns repeat across generations and relationships. When we speak this truth, we are often met with defensiveness, denial, or dismissal, so we learn to say nothing. We learn that our insights, our genuine concern, and our ability to perceive what others miss are not gifts to be shared, but burdens to be carried in silence. Over time, this enforced silence becomes a part of one's identity. We begin to believe that our depth, our intensity, our ability to see, must be hidden, because it is inherently unsettling. Hiding becomes not an act we choose in the moment, but a fundamental orientation toward the world. We do not ask ourselves, "Should I share this truth?" We ask ourselves, "Will this hurt them? Will this push them away? Will they think I'm controlling, judgmental, or too much?" And so we edit ourselves, compress ourselves, reduce ourselves into smaller, more palatable versions of who we actually are. The mythology of the shadow self, illuminated by Jung, provides another layer of understanding. Jung suggested that each of us contains within ourselves qualities and impulses we reject, hide, and exile into the unconscious. For INFJs, this shadow is particularly complex. Our shadow is not merely our capacity for anger or selfishness, though we possess these like any human being. Our shadow is our visibility, our power, our desire to be understood, held and seen. The INFJ shadow is the parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable to show, our intense need for connection, our terror of rejection, our profound loneliness, our rage at being misunderstood. In many ways, the INFJ has been taught to hide not the worst of themselves, but the truest of themselves. We hide our intensity because we have been told it is too much. We hide our insights because we have been told they are judgmental. We hide our need for depth in relationships because we have learned that vulnerability in an INFJ is perceived as weakness or manipulation. So we construct a version of ourselves that is gentler, quieter, more accommodating. We become the version of ourselves that the world finds acceptable, and we lock the authentic version away in a cave like Plato's prisoner, holding the chains ourselves. The paradox deepens when we consider what hiding actually costs the INFJ. When we compress our truth, edit our insights, and reduce our visibility, we do not simply protect ourselves from rejection. We also limit our growth potential and deprive ourselves of genuine connection. This is perhaps the cruelest irony of the INFJ archetype. We are capable of profound intimacy, of seeing others with clarity that borders on the mystical, yet we often find ourselves profoundly alone because we refuse to be seen in return. We become collectors of other people's secrets whilst guarding our own so fiercely that those close to us often have no idea of our inner world, our struggles, our needs, or our pain. In trying to protect ourselves and others through hiding, we have created a different kind of pain altogether, the pain of isolation masquerading as safety, loneliness disguised as wisdom. The mechanisms of INFJ hiding are varied and intricate, woven through years of learning what it means to exist as someone who perceives what others do not. These mechanisms are not conscious choices made each morning but rather deeply ingrained patterns of being that have calcified into personality traits. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step toward recognizing when we are hiding, and, more importantly, understanding why even the most self-aware INFJ struggles to stop. The first mechanism is what we might call the empathic suppressant. The INFJ possesses an extraordinary capacity for empathy, which is often mistaken for niceness, when in truth it is something far more complex and burdensome. This empathy is not a passive feeling. It is an active, almost psychic attunement to the emotional states of others. We do not simply observe someone's sadness, we feel it, we absorb it, we carry it with us. This is an immense capacity, but it comes with a terrible cost. Because we feel others' pain so acutely, we become hyper-aware of our own potential to cause pain through our words, our truths, or our existence itself. If we speak our mind, might we hurt them? If we assert our needs, might we burden them? If we show our depth, might we frighten them? These questions loop endlessly in the INFJ mind, and the only answer that seems to satisfy all of them is silence. So we suppress our empathy for ourselves and amplify our empathy for others. We allow their comfort to take precedence over our honesty. We hide not because we are afraid of what others might do to us, but because we fear what our truth might do to them. This leads directly into the second mechanism, the guardian complex. INFJs often position themselves as guardians, protectors, or guides for those around them. This archetype has its roots deeply embedded in mythology. We see it in Merlin, guiding Arthur from the shadows. We see it in the archetype of the wise counselor in cultures across the world. But the guardian complex in INFJs often becomes twisted into something different from its mythic ideal. Rather than standing at the threshold and guiding others through their own transformation, the INFJ begins to believe they must shield others from difficult truths, protect them from hard decisions, or spare them from the burden of knowing how the INFJ truly feels. The INFJ becomes a guardian not in the sense of empowering others to face their own dragons, but in the sense of denying them access to the INFJ's own reality. We believe that if others truly knew the full extent of our inner world, the complexity of our thoughts, the intensity of our feelings, they would be burdened or damaged by this knowledge. So we guard it fiercely. We tell ourselves we are being kind, being considerate, being mature. But underneath this narrative is a more painful truth. We do not believe we are worthy of being known. We do not trust others with our reality because, deep down, we do not believe that our reality is something that deserves to be witnessed. The third mechanism is what we might call the truth interpreter. INFJs possess a quality that others often interpret as wisdom or spiritual insight, but which is really something closer to pattern recognition on a grand scale. We see the connections between things. We sense the trajectory of events before they unfold. We understand the symbolic meaning beneath surface events. This ability is often genuinely powerful, but it can also become a trap. When we perceive a truth, we often present it to others, wrapped in layers of hedging, qualification, and softening language. We become interpreters of truth rather than its speakers. We translate what we know into forms we believe others can handle. We add disclaimers. We understate. We reframe our knowing as merely a perspective or something to consider rather than a genuine insight. Over time, this translation layer becomes so thick that we lose track of the boundary between what we actually know and what we are pretending to believe. We hide behind our interpretations of truth rather than standing in our own clarity. The fourth mechanism is the selective mirror. This is particularly important to understand because it is where the INFJ's capacity for empathy becomes almost manipulative, though not intentionally so. INFJs possess an uncanny ability to reflect back to others what they need to hear, thereby becoming the version of themselves that makes others feel comfortable and understood. This is not a conscious fabrication but rather a natural attunement. We are so attuned to others that we often become mirrors, and like all mirrors, we show them themselves rather than ourselves. Over time, this mirroring becomes such a dominant mode of relating that people close to us often do not realize they do not know us at all. They know how we make them feel. They know that we understand them. They do not know what actually occupies our inner world, what keeps us awake, what frightens us, or what we truly desire. We have hidden so completely behind the role of observer and reflector that we have become invisible even to those who supposedly know us best. The selective mirror allows us to maintain a connection while avoiding intimacy, to be present while remaining absent, to give everything while withholding ourselves. The final mechanism is the escape artist's instinct. INFJs, when faced with the prospect of genuine exposure or close examination of their inner world, often employ a subtle form of escape. This is not running away in the obvious sense, but rather a kind of psychological withdrawal. We become suddenly busy, we redirect conversations. We disappear into our work, into service to others, into projects and causes that feel more important than our own visibility. We make decisions to restructure our lives in ways that reduce intimacy and increase distance. We change jobs, move cities, restructure friendships under the guise of personal growth or practical necessity, when in truth we are fleeing from the possibility of being truly known. This escape artist mechanism allows us to maintain the appearance of living a full life whilst creating structures that protect us from genuine contact. We stay in motion, always focused on the next external goal or crisis, so that no one can catch us long enough to really see us. The escape artist knows instinctively that staying still means being found, and being found means being known, and being known means risking everything. Understanding why INFJs hide is only the beginning of a deeper inquiry. The more challenging question is what we sacrifice when we hide, and perhaps more importantly, what becomes possible when we learn to step into visibility. This is not a simple matter of becoming more open or more vulnerable, as many pop psychology articles suggest. This is about a fundamental recalibration of identity, and a radical reimagining of what it means to inhabit the world as an INFJ, who is fully present and fully known. When we hide, we often tell ourselves we are protecting both ourselves and others. We tell ourselves that our depth is too much, that our insights might harm or disturb, that our needs might burden those we love, but this narrative obscures a darker truth. Hiding is also an act of control. When we remain hidden, when we do not allow ourselves to be fully known, we also prevent others from genuinely choosing us. We make choices on their behalf. We decide what they can handle. We determine the terms of intimacy, without their participation in that determination. In this way, hiding becomes a subtle violation, a denial of other people's agency and capacity to receive us fully. It is a gracious-sounding act that is, in truth, quite arrogant. It assumes that we know better what others need than they themselves do. It assumes that we have the right to control how much of ourselves we reveal, based on our own fears and beliefs, rather than inviting others into genuine negotiation about intimacy and visibility. When we emerge from hiding and begin to stand in our own truth, something shifts not only in ourselves but in the entire relational field around us. First, we discover that the catastrophe we feared does not materialize. The people we believe care about us do not flee when they discover our depth, our intensity, our complexity. In fact, the opposite often occurs. When we permit ourselves to be genuinely known, we create a kind of permission structure for others to be known as well. We model the very thing that may have been missing from their lives: the presence of someone unafraid of their own humanity. We give others permission to be human in our presence, which is one of the most powerful gifts we can offer. Second, we discover that our hiding has cost us more than we realized. We have spent so much energy managing our image, editing our words, suppressing our insights, and translating our truth into acceptable forms that we have exhausted ourselves. The INFJ who emerges from hiding often describes this exhaustion lifting as if a weight held for decades has finally been set down. This is not metaphorical. The physiological impact of constant self-suppression is real. We have been living in a state of perpetual contraction, holding ourselves in, and this holding affects every system of our being. When we step into visibility, we step into a different relationship with our own life force. Third, and perhaps most significantly, we discover that our hiding has prevented us from receiving what we most desperately need: genuine understanding and reciprocal intimacy. The INFJ is capable of understanding others with remarkable clarity, but we have been taught that offering this understanding is our role, our gift, our duty. We have not been taught that we ourselves are worthy of being understood with equal depth. We have not been taught that our own clarity and insight are things that others might long to receive from us. When we emerge from hiding, we discover that others are hungry for our authenticity, our truth, our depth. They have been waiting for us to stop translating and start speaking. They have been trying to find their way to us beneath layers of acceptable persona, and all along, we have been invisible, not because we were too much, but because we were refusing to be seen. The transformation from hiding to visibility is not a single dramatic moment, but a series of small choices that accumulate into a different way of being. It begins when an INFJ decides, in a small moment, to speak a truth rather than suppress it. It continues as we observe that this truth does not destroy, that it does not push people away, that it actually creates space for something more authentic to emerge between ourselves and others. Over time, these small choices begin to reshape our sense of identity. We begin to believe, tentatively at first, that our authenticity is not a burden but a gift. We begin to understand that our visibility does not diminish others, it actually illuminates them. We begin to recognize that the hiding we thought was compassion was actually a form of distance, masquerading as care. In the mythic language of the hero's journey, the INFJ's journey from hiding to visibility mirrors the classic monomyth described by Joseph Campbell. We begin in the ordinary world, unaware of our own exile, believing that our invisibility is necessary and kind. We receive a call to adventure, which arises from the accumulation of pain, through the exhaustion of constant self-suppression, through the loneliness of being profoundly unknown even by those closest to us. We meet mentors and allies, perhaps therapists, friends, or our own inner wisdom speaking through intuition, who suggest that another way of being is possible. We cross the threshold into the unknown territory of visibility, which feels terrifying because it is genuinely unknown. We face tests and trials, which come in the form of moments when revealing ourselves is risky, when speaking truth might challenge someone we care about, and when standing in our own clarity might create temporary distance. And finally, if we persist, we achieve a kind of integration. We emerge from the cave of hiding not as someone who has abandoned their capacity for empathy, insight, or consideration, but as someone who has learned that these qualities are not diminished by visibility, but actually amplified by it. The INFJ who has learned to be visible, who has stepped out of the cave and trained their eyes to the light, offers something the hidden INFJ cannot: authentic presence. This person can meet others with genuine clarity, without the filter of protective distance. This person can offer insights not wrapped in hedging language and qualification, but offered with the confidence that comes from having chosen honesty. This person can receive others' understanding and reciprocate with their own, creating the possibility of genuine mutual knowing that was impossible when hiding was the default. This person can model for a world that desperately needs it what it looks like to live in alignment with one's own truth, to value authenticity over comfort, and to prioritize genuine connection over a managed image. The deepest secret that INFJs guard, underneath all the others, is this: we are not afraid of being too much. We are not afraid that our intensity will damage others. We are afraid that if we are fully known, we will discover that we are not enough. This fear runs so deep, so primal, that we construct entire lives around managing it. We hide not because we are too powerful, but because we doubt our power. We hide not because we are too deep, but because we fear our depth is an abyss with no bottom, that if someone really looked into us, they would fall endlessly, and find nothing of value. This is the ultimate lie that underlies all the hiding, and it is a lie that only visibility can disprove. When you stand fully visible before another person, and discover that they do not shrink away, that they do not diminish, but instead move closer, rather than further away, something fundamental shifts in your understanding of yourself. You realize that you are never too much, you are only afraid of being seen, and that fear, once named and faced directly, loses much of its power. If this has resonated with you, if you found yourself recognizing your own patterns of hiding in these words, then you already know the first step: recognition. It is challenging to change patterns we cannot name, and yet the moment we can see our own hiding, something shifts. We become aware of our own agency in the process. We begin to notice the moments when we are suppressing, translating, and withdrawing, and in that awareness lies the possibility of choice. In the comments below, I would love to hear from you. What has your hiding cost you? What are the patterns you recognize in these words? Have you had an experience of stepping into visibility, and discovering that the catastrophe you feared did not materialize? Your story matters, and your willingness to be seen by this community of fellow INFJs, fellow deep thinkers, fellow outsiders who have discovered their own paths from hiding to authenticity, is precisely what transforms this conversation from individual insight into collective healing. I do not believe you came to this video by accident. I believe some part of you is ready to emerge from the cave, to let your eyes adjust to the light, and to discover what becomes possible when you stop hiding. If you resonate with these ideas about INFJs and the deeper patterns of human psychology, I encourage you to subscribe. We explore these territories together regularly, always seeking greater understanding and inviting you to bring your full, authentic self into the conversation. You are not alone in your depth, in your intensity, in your struggle to be seen. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being willing to step into the light alongside us.